wild poppies, herbal infused panna cotta, and getting busted for taking fruit from a cherry tree. This week, we're foraging in Abruzzo, Italy.
Traveling the world to bring you delicious dishes, tasty beverages, and interesting experiences. This is the Destination Eat Drink Podcast on the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
I'm Brent Peterson, and welcome to the Destination Eat Drink Podcast. Destination Eat Drink is for foodies who love to travel and travelers who love to eat. And this time, we're talking about foraging in Abruzzo, Italy, with Marta Udalowa from Il Monte Farmhouse. But first, if you've been enjoying Destination Eat Drink, please review the podcast, give us those 5 stars. And if you want more Destination Eat Drink, I've published 24 foodie travel guide ebooks. Each travel guide is only $2.99 to $5.99 and gives you all the best things to eat and drink, where to get them, along with the coolest things to do in places like Seville, Spain, Lisbon, Portugal, and Milan, Italy. Download yours at buymeacoffee.com/destinationeatdrink/extras. And thank you very, very much. Marta Udalowa is originally from Poland. She and her husband gave up corporate careers in Ireland for a peaceful life in rural Abruzzo, Italy. Marta goes by the name Forager in Italy on Facebook and Instagram, and she shares her adventures finding wild herbs, flowers, fruits, and vegetables all over Abruzzo. It's so entertaining. Marta's also got a small farm in Abruzzo, of course, where she rents out a farmhouse to curious travelers who want to get away from it all. Marta's here to tell me about what she finds in Abruzzo each season. We talk about figs, plums, greens, elderberries, mushrooms, all kinds of stuff. Plus, Marta tells me about how she likes to prepare and share the bounty and the innate generosity of the people of Abruzzo. Okay, I'm starving, so let's eat.
Destination Eat Drink.
Marta from Il Monte Farmhouse in Abruzzo, Italy. Welcome to Destination Eat Drink. Can't wait to get out and do some foraging with you today.
Hi, Brent. Thanks a million. I hope we're going to meet here one time. It's an absolutely beautiful part of the earth, Abruzzo, and so undiscovered. If you want a place that is green and still very wild, with very few people, but absolutely amazing nature, you should come over.
I love Abruzzo, and I want to come there. We were planning on going to Abruzzo before COVID struck, and then COVID hit, and we just have not made it back, although there's a chance that we're thinking maybe next spring we might make it to Abruzzo, which I think would be a lovely time to be in Abruzzo and see all the green and the blooming wildflowers and things like that.
Definitely the spring is so you can avoid the 40 Celsius plus heat. I think, somewhere between April and May would be ideal.
Perfect.
It's super lush and so many wild orchids and so many everything is in bloom basically, and everything is lush green. So very good idea to come more or less that time.
Marta, I discovered you through the Abruzzo Foraging group on Facebook. So I get to follow you on Facebook. I would encourage everyone else to do so as well, because you post so many cool, interesting things. And that's why I wanted to have you on the show today to talk about your foraging experience in Abruzzo. As you mentioned, it's a very wild area, still undiscovered, still very much undeveloped. And I thought what we would do today is talk about some of the different seasons and the different things that you forage and what you do with those things that you forage and how people can make them and whatnot. So let's start at the beginning of the year in winter. And I know that you've got mountains in Abruzzo, so there's probably snowfall, but can you forage all year round? Can you go out in the middle of winter and find stuff?
Okay, so to start with, and maybe to give the listeners an idea of how Abruzzo is made as land, it's made of, it has both the seaside and the mountains. And to imagine how close it is from, let's say, level 0, the sea level, to about 1,200 meters above sea level, takes less than an hour. So basically, we live at 700 meters above sea level. We can see the Adriatic, and we can see the Majella Mountains that reach well over 2,000 meters. which means if we're snowed under, we can always drive down 15 minutes below, everything is lush green because the snow doesn't ever get there. If we want to go and get some cooler place because it's plus 40 odd hours, it's enough to take half an hour's drive higher up, and the temperature is dropping a couple of degrees. What it means in terms of foraging is that we have very prolonged seasons for everything seasonal. You can start low and then keep making your way up, then you reach our home level more or less, and then when it's finished, there's a given herb or green is finished at our altitude, you can always keep going higher and still find the same thing for months instead of weeks. So yes, in winter there is foraging available. We don't get long winters here at our altitude, but even if we're snowed under, honestly, it's 10 minutes drive and I can get a bucket full of lush greens just down below and no problem with that. I think the best winter foraging for me are really the greens. There's still some mushrooms left, but in general, I'd go for the greens. Many edible greens here have 2 seasons. So we have the first season in the spring, and then we have the second season late autumn after we get decent rainfall after a very hot and dry summer. So my greens of the winter would usually be, well, definitely nettles, because nettles can be picked all year round, more or less. Borage. Certain thistles here have 2 seasons as well. Oxtongue, maybe a slightly less known, very, very tasty green. Wild chicoria. Chicoria, I think in English would be chicory.
Chicory,
yeah?
yes.
Chicory, yes. So we collect these greens as well. So bitter greens definitely have 2 seasons, most of them. Also wild garlics. Pro garlic is definitely my favorite one because it's most abundant, most easy to spot, and it grows twice a year. So it's like wild chives. So you can collect it and use it as if you would chives in your cooking, or to use as spice. You can dry it. It dries very well as well. So yeah, my main foraging in winter is the greens. There's also some fruit. Rosehip. Rosehip is best in winter, and maybe we can't really wait till after the first frosts, like I was taught in Poland you should, because there's nothing left after the first frost if they ever come. But definitely in the winter, the rosehip, the fruit is already very sweet and sour and soft, and it's much easier to process than when it's really like stone hard. At the moment, it is still too hard and too acidic as well. It doesn't have any sweetness yet. Persimmon is another kind of fruit that you can find here. Technically, it's not a wild fruit, but as with many other kinds of fruit around here, there's many self-seeded trees, and there's many trees growing on completely abandoned lands. Abruzzo used to be very, well, not very, but densely populated. Just as an idea, our comune, if I remember correct, the old people told me that 40 years ago we would have, let's say, 15,000 inhabitants. At the moment, I don't know if we hit 3 or 4, and most of them would be like 70 plus.
Wow.
So it's really a land that has been getting abandoned for years. And now it's mostly really the elderly staying here. Young people run away from here because they want job opportunities. They want wages paid instead of having to work the land and do all these harder kind of jobs. They want nice, clean office or a manufacturing place, getting paid and worrying about nothing. So that's how all these places are getting empty, unfortunately. But that's how I can enjoy an awful lot, buckets and buckets and buckets of wild fruit, because all these houses are abandoned. They don't even have fences. People planted fruit trees there maybe 50, 70 years ago, and they still bear fruit. So what you need to do is just go. There's not even anyone to ask permission. You just go and pick. There's nobody in kilometers and miles around you. So, you're not doing a bad thing all in all, because
you're not stealing. You're not stealing because there's no one to steal from.
Yeah, that's the thing. If there is a person, I had this case once when I was picking, I was up a tree with my very visible bright yellow bucket, and I was picking cherries from a tree that was growing in the middle of a meadow, I don't know, a field, but not like a worked field. And the man approaches with a tractor and, and hands on his hips and like, "So what are you doing?" And me being me with a big smile, "I'm picking cherries." "Oh, is that your tree?" He was, "Yes, so it happens it is." I said, "Okay." are you okay with me continuing to pick your cherries? Because I've noticed for years that nobody has been picking them. It's a waste. I'm making jams out of them. Can I find you with 2 or 3 jars of jams after I'm done with it? Would that be okay? And he just looked at me and was like, no, I don't really eat jams. You're okay to keep picking. Just don't break the branches. And I was like, why would I break the branches? What would I come and pick next year if I wasn't respecting your tree? And we both had a laugh, and that was it. But I do it with a number of people locally. They just let me know if they have something they won't bother, or they won't have time or possibility to process, and they just ask me, do you want this? Tomatoes, courgettes, apples, persimmon, whatever it is that they just have and they can't do anything with. If they bother, they ask me. If they don't bother, I ask them, are you planning to do anything with your tomatoes or with your kakis or with your apples? And say, no, do you want them? I say, yeah, okay, come pick anytime you want. And I bring back some preserves, and that works perfectly here.
You mentioned, Marta, that you're from Poland originally, and I'm wondering, did you get interested in foraging in Poland, or is this an Italian endeavor for you?
No. I think my generation, I was born in 1980. For my generation, life was much simpler because we're talking pre-internet, pre-mobile phones, and pre-TikToks and all of it. So for most people of my generation, even though I'm a city girl in second generation, was going out, for example, mushroom picking with your grandparents or with your family. Since we were little, since we probably could walk, we would go to the forest to pick wild mushrooms and blueberries in the summer and wild raspberries in the forests. And my granny would teach me some herbs, like that yarrow is good if I graze myself and have some bleeding, or that broadleaf plantain, if I, chew it a bit and something stings me, it's good to rub it on it and it's going to go. Little silly things that we just grew up with, like mint tea, good for your tummy issues, or chamomile if you have a sticky eye. It's not like it was any particular kind of studying or teaching on behalf of our families, but it was just part of life. Not because we didn't have enough to eat or that, pharmaceuticals were not accessible. It's just because everybody was doing that since always. So I think probably it started back then. But yes, indeed, I was a very weird child that would taste everything since I was born. so I think this helped with this never stopping curiosity of, would it not be the best thing I've ever tasted, or would it not have some interesting flavor that I've not had in my mouth yet? So that is always an engine that also keeps me going and tasting new weeds and fruit and mushrooms and thinking what to do with them to come up with something super tasty that maybe very few people realize is just at your doorstep. So that's what I'm trying to do here as well. Show people that weeds can be really, really tasty if you do something good with them. They're not just green goo. They can they can easily hit Michelin-starred restaurants, and they should actually, because there's no healthier ingredients and more sustainable ingredients than weeds.
Yeah, I've told the story before on the podcast. I remember taking a train through the mountains of Italy, and I saw a train worker, an employee of the railroad, was on the side of the rail tracks, just picking greens for lunch, and he was holding them in his vest. That's how he was gathering them up, and I was like, man, that's going to make a fantastic dinner. I recognized it as a wild rocket that he was picking because, I've grown that in my garden myself. And I said, oh, I'll bet you that's going to be the tastiest rocket in the world that this guy's going to have for his dinner. But you mentioned the medicinal herbs back in Poland. And if we move on from winter to spring, I would have to imagine that you guys get tons of herbs shooting up their sprouts when spring finally arrives.
They do, definitely, other than even bigger abundance of greens that are popping everywhere by then. Of course, we get all the medicinal and edible, because they usually come together. Well, maybe not usually, but very often, like elderflower is one of my favorite ingredients, both in cooking, but also as a medicinal herb. It smells beautiful. It is super abundant everywhere. You can dry it very easily, and it makes the most beautiful fragrant tea in the winter that also helps with the colds and whatever flus and whatever other, typical winter, autumn, cold season ailments you can have. But you can also use it to infuse your fresh cream to make an absolutely amazing and unusual panna cotta or semifreddo or ice cream or any other pudding. So it is very, very versatile. Then we also get some other herbs like, again, edible and medicinal like dill or wild fennel. We get the greens at that time, not seeds or flowers yet. But again, they dry very well, and these can help you with digestion, but also add flavor to your dishes. We have what other things? The wild garlics, they still come up, and I'm sure more or less everybody knows that garlic not only is amazing flavor-wise, but it also is very antibacterial and does all kinds of wonders to whatever issues you might have with whatever bacterial or viral infections in your body. So you can also, you can spoil yourself adding garlic to most things. I'm still considering the idea of, garlic-flavored desserts, but didn't get there yet. My husband is stopping me a little bit. He's saying, okay, they make garlic ice cream in Sulmona because it's the land of garlic here in Abruzzo. And it's like, they said it's not very nice, so maybe hold your horses. I was like, well, maybe they've not done it right. Maybe I can do it right.
I think I used to make gelato back in the States, and I never really experimented with garlic, but I would imagine once you roast it, you get a little bit of that sweetness. So that might be the method rather than just using raw garlic, which might be just a little bit too astringent for for ice cream.
Yeah, but we have absolutely beautiful looking and smelling and tasting rosy garlic here that grows wild and Napolitan garlic. And of this, I don't really harvest the green parts or the bulbs, but the flowers. And the flowers have just the faintest back hint of garlic in them. And I think this would look super beautiful because it does look beautiful and tastes really nice with cheeses. I made a couple of fresh and maturing goat's cheeses with the rosy garlic flowers, and it looks beautiful. And it's just a little hint of the garlic that makes it interesting. And I can easily imagine having this cheese with honey. So yeah, I think there's some potential there. There is some potential there.
It's a never-ending process of all of these new things that you're thinking of and trying. You mentioned the wildflowers that bloom in Abruzzo in the spring. Are there edible flowers that you like to forage?
Definitely, yes. I mean, there are so many flowers that really taste good. Because I know that there's been a trend a while ago, and probably it's still ongoing, to add flowers as a part of, the decoration of the dishes. What I don't really like is just putting flowers that taste of nothing just for the sake of it. If there's a flower on the plate, I would like it to bring something to the dish. And here we can get really spoiled for choice because violets, okay, they're very faint aroma. But for example, wild mustard flowers, they can be from like honey with slight spicy note to like deadly heat of wasabi. So depending if it's, the black mustard, the field mustard, the white mustard, there's many, many different kinds here. And you can really, really have fun with adding them to different dishes for these particular flavors, stronger or less strong. There's mallow flowers that look beautiful, don't taste of much, but they are very good for you. And traditionally in Abruzzo, people dry them to make them into herbal teas that ease your stomach pains. We would use mint or chamomile for that purpose in Poland, but in here, mallow leaf and flower is the herb of choice. What else do we have? Oxalis. Oxalis is the same family as shamrock, more or less. I call it oxalis because it's easier for me to, go with Latin names or Latin Italian names that usually sound very similar. There's too many languages in my head and there's too many common names not to get confused. Because we're a trilingual family, so that's already complicated. So when it comes to herbs and mushrooms, I like to stick to the Latin names. It's easier. So oxalis is basically a very sour herb, like sorrel, maybe. And we have at least 3 different kinds in here with yellow flowers, with pink flowers, and they really decidedly acidic, and they pair beautifully both with fish and sweet desserts. So this is, again, fantastic flower that just grows, on the trees in the shade nearly everywhere. If you're in the spring, you might actually see there's like cushions of bright pink flowers. Under them, really bright green leaves, and both the leaves and the flowers can be eaten, and both are acidic. And they really make, not just for salads, but just add them, to your strawberry and mint fruit salad, and they just pimp up the acidity. You don't even need to add the lemon, and they look amazing.
Oh,
So yeah,
wow.
there's really, I mean, it's like I've been doing it for so many years now, and I feel like I've only just scratched the surface. There's so many things that actually do taste amazing here, even on their own, without any processing, and they're just completely unknown or known to very few people, or just completely like dismissed as an edible thing, which is such a pity because they're free and they're just at your doorstep. So I'm hoping, doing what I'm doing, I'll be able to educate some people, at least locally, maybe encourage them at least to try and, pick even just one herb or maybe just one kind of green and just do it more regularly, not like a wow, once a year thing, but just when they're at their best, at your doorstep.
Because this information, you mentioned how Abruzzo is depopulating with young people going to where the jobs are. This information would normally get passed down from the older generation to the younger generation, but when it's only the older generation left in the town, there's no one to pass it on to. So I think that's why it's great that you're sharing this information. I'm wondering, do you also do classes, or you do events or experiences where people can go out with you and maybe learn something about foraging in Abruzzo?
Yes, I do. I don't organize them as often as I would like to yet. But I do organize foraging experiences. So basically, we just meet in a given place. It could be my little village. It could be somewhere in the mountains. Could be in some other woods. Or could be an olive grove. And we just go for a foraging walk. So we just walk casually and stop by and really, I mean, it's enough to take one step and you can already have like 20 edibles everywhere. Literally everywhere in Abruzzo. You just stand every square meter. It has like 80% of the square meter is edible or useful in some way. Then again, from this 80%, maybe 20% is really worth picking. So we usually focus on the ones that I consider worth picking, that do have some flavor or they do offer some texture. And we just stop, and I encourage people to, to try and identify them, but not just remembering the name. And I don't try to kill everyone with the, Latin binomials and all that. But more let people taste them, touch them, smell them, just get to know the plant with all the senses, because this is the best way, I feel, to try and remember the plant, but also the best way to remember the details. There's no way you can remember Latin names if you never touch the plant again. But once you touch it and then repeat it again at the end of the experience and try to remember the name and what to do with it, we focus on 2-3 plants maybe, because obviously people are not going to remember 40. That already, usually, that makes people more confident to at least try when they go back home. And then after the walk, we also have a wild picnic. I prepare some bento boxes with like little picnic snacks, in which I try and put as many of the edibles that we would have come across during the walk, so that people can actually taste them and find out for themselves that they really can be very good to eat. And we discuss it and we talk about, life choices, and we talk about why foraging is not as popular as it could be potentially, and what to do to make it maybe more part of our lives, and why is it good for us, for nature, for reducing food waste and everything else. And if anyone wants, then like the last time I had a group of people that really were curious to find out how to make some of these things. So I just sent them all a very rough recipe of how I made it. Because very often I just invent them just before the walk. Because, I come across as like, oh, this came early this year, so that's what I'm going to use because it's so lush and beautiful. So I first pick the ingredient and then I think of what to do with it. And and some people do try and make it back home. They really, really are very simple things. All you need to know is, which green to pick or fruit to pick and what to do with it. They're very simple process. I'm super practical as a person, so I don't like all these steams that have an aroma of something, molecular cooking and all of it. It's interesting, but not for me. I want it as simple as it can be and as tasty as it can be. If I can combine the two, I'm very happy. So really simple dishes. So these are the experiences I do here that are strictly for foraging. And we also do food experiences in which I always say, I try to smuggle some weeds to every single dish so that people can actually taste them. In no matter if it's an Indian dish, a Polish one, I don't know, a modern Abruzzo recipe, but they can actually taste the wild stuff growing around and say, this is actually really good. And I also sell the jams, the preserves that I make. And usually people are amazed that something can taste so good and so intense. And it's a very simple thing. If it's fruit jam, it's made of fruit and sugar. I don't even add any gelifying agents, never use any thickeners, don't add any pectin. If the fruit doesn't have pectin, then be it. It's going to be in syrup or whatever. All it takes is just really 2 ingredients. And believe me, these preserves done well can last you for years. We've opened a jar of jam I made in 2018 yesterday for a cake, and there was absolutely nothing wrong with it. Wow. It was a fig jam. And it tasted as good as if we just made it. So, simple, but done well, and that's it. That's really all you ever need to make good preserves or to feed yourself well. Be sure that it's fresh and clean and just process it in the most simple way. That's it.
How would people, if they wanted to be part of one of these next events that you're doing, Marta, how would they get in touch with you for that?
They can contact me or through Instagram or through Facebook. I don't have a website as such because it's been developing more as my passion and interest than as a business so far. So they can find me on Forager in Italy. It's the same name of the profile, Forager in Italy, on both Instagram and Facebook. And if you click on my profile, there'll be my phone number, so you can contact me through WhatsApp, or there's also emails given. They can get in touch via emails. I publish the events as well every so often. But I can also, if I'm available, obviously, I can accommodate groups. Say if someone comes to Abruzzo and there's 5, 6 people at least, or even 4, and would like to just go foraging on a given date, they can surely get in touch. And if I can provide this experience to them, I'll be very happy to at the time that suits them as well. So we can arrange that. Definitely, we can arrange that. I'm hoping that with time, I'll be able to provide more regular experiences. But at the moment, time is an issue. So hopefully when all the kids have grown and I'm really practical with everything else that we're organizing here and trying to make easier to manage, our goats, our small holding, our rental, our home restaurant, all of these things that I'm trying to tackle at the same time. Hopefully, in a couple of years, it will be much easier to also focus more on the foraging experiences. At the moment, just get in touch with me and I'll do my best to go foraging with you.
Let's move on from spring to summer. And I would have to imagine when we get into summer, it must be a bounty of fruit. You talked about going to abandoned properties, lots of abandoned properties in Abruzzo. So I imagine you get a lot of fruit there. Talk about that. And maybe is there also wild fruit that you would find during the summer?
Yes, but to be honest, the most abundant season for fruit in Abruzzo is autumn. It's not the summer.
Okay.
Summers here are super, super dry. So the biggest crop of fruit we get is really at the very end of the summer and in the autumn. But yeah, there are definitely still things that you can pick in the summer. So the season starts with cherries. Cherries would be ready in June in Abruzzo, more or less, depending on the altitude. And we have plenty of self-seeded cherries that people here call visciole or amarene. They're tiny, they're quite tart, but they make absolutely beautiful preserves. And they make pretty nice jams, but they're kind of fiddly because there isn't much pulp on them. But then for jams and all kinds of sweet preserves, yes, I can always climb somebody's tree. People in my village are very much used to the fact that I'm slightly bonkers, and despite my age, they would usually see
There's
me
Marta up in a tree again.
Up a tree. Yeah. Well, I've had a car crash twice nearly because
Oh,
I was
jeez.
at the corner of a street that passes through our village up a tree with this yellow bucket. And people driving just probably couldn't believe what they see, and they just stared, at me and nearly crashed because that was a turn. But I was only twice. So yeah, I think I'm a bit exotic for these areas, but that's okay. I don't mind it because at the end I'm coming back with a bucket of fruit. Yeah. We do have the figs as well, because many figs here have 2 seasons. The first season is usually not amazing when it comes to the quality of fruit, but we do get some figs in the summer as well. We do get the yellow plums. Again, plum at my altitude is one of the most varied kinds of fruit trees. There's so many different shapes and colors and seasons. We start with big plump yellow ones that we move on to sort of greenish yellow smaller ones. In the meantime, we have Mirabella plums in different colors. And then we have all the dark ones and red and black ones. And then we have sloes and all kinds of mixes and hybrids that happened because nature wanted it to do so. So yeah, plums basically start in July and we can keep picking them until nearly December, depending on what type of plum it is. But back to the summer fruit, there's also elderberries. It's definitely a wild kind of fruit, and maybe I'm not the biggest fan of the jam, but they dry really nice and they make really, really good liquors and syrups, which then come very, very handy in the winter. There's no better medicinal syrup or liquor that you can treat yourself with when you have a cold because it's such a potent immunity booster. So you don't really need to heal your symptoms with anything. All you do to your body is you just make it stronger and more potent in fighting the infection. And it seems to be working magic, like herbs do usually. And what else do we have what other fruits could we have? I think that's it, maybe in the summer. There's really the busiest season for me starts in September when we have all the apples, we have the late plums, we have the pears, all kinds of nuts as well are coming in. Sorbet, haws, yeah. So that would be autumn. So let's talk about fruit more in the autumn. Summer is more for aromatic herbs as well. So we have the wild oregano here. We start having the wild fennel seeds that are very, they're used very widely in cooking in Abruzzo as well as one of the traditional spices that goes with everything, with the sausage, with sweet buns, with baking, maybe less as tea, which can be a bit shocking because I got to know fennel as tea for colics, for babies. That's how it's used in Poland mostly. And here it's a spice that's added to many, many different kinds of foods. Yeah, in the summer we also have an awful lot of edible flowers. So we have the robinia flowers, and robinias here. There's just millions of them. What they call acacia or acacia honey here, made that the bees made from robinia flowers. It's very sweet and very, very perfumed, and it's one of the best honeys here. We have sulla. That is also a plant that the bees make local honey of. Very, very sweet. It's a forage plant, but it's very sweet raw and it looks beautiful. There are whole fields, bright pink fields of sulla when you drive through Abruzzo. So a very pretty sight again, May, June, more or less. We have the poppies.
Oh.
The wild poppies, not the opium ones, no.
Yeah, of course.
Just the field poppies. It's also a very beautiful sight here because you would be driving through Abruzzo countryside and you have fields of grains, usually it's durum wheat or wheat. And it's speckled with bright red poppy flowers, which means that there's no herbicides being used, which makes like for me, it's like, because in my childhood in Poland, all the wheat fields were speckled blue and white and red. Blue was for cornflower, white was for chamomile, and red was for poppies. And then I went to the university, and then I came back to Poland, and there's nothing. There's just wheat in the fields. There's not one flower left because everything is being sprayed. Maybe it's changed now. Like I've not lived in Poland for over 20 years now, but it was, just to realize this at some stage that something is not right with what you're looking at through the window of the bus. And then you realize what it is, and you're thinking, this is wrong. I mean, it's more practical, but it's wrong.
Yeah.
Like we lost. So in here, I found what I remember from my childhood. Yeah, the fields are still speckled heavily, at least with poppies. Chamomile, maybe not, but definitely with poppies. And you can eat poppies, both the greens and the petals.
You mentioned fall's a big time for fruit, and I put together in my brain, I'm thinking, okay, so we've got fall, you've got all these fruits, you've also got abandoned farms and houses. I'm wondering, because my mind goes to wine, I'm wondering, are there abandoned vineyards as well? Do you find grapes that you can forage when you get into the fall time?
Oh yes, oh yes. It's one of the late autumn forages, and depending on the year, you can get anywhere between, like on a little abandoned vineyard, you can get anywhere between 5, 6, 7 bucketfuls of grapes, or maybe you can get half a bucket from the same place a year after. So the fruit that was once cultivated, okay, they're the old varieties, so they way more lively and more sturdy than what we're planting now. But still, it's not a wild thing technically. So they're like, the plants gone wild, which means they can't really manage very successfully every single season. But I remember one season when I usually discover these foraging places by accident. I walk by or I drive by and something catches my eye and I stop and here it is. So that was the thing with the abandoned vineyard that then I raid every autumn. It's completely overgrown. It's a mix of olive trees and they're getting suffocated by the vines of the once upon a time vineyard. And I stopped there because I was just driving past. It's a little known road and it was black up the olive tree. And I stopped to see what the hell it is. And they were massive, massive grapes of super beautiful grapes that otherwise just the birds would eat. So I came back with a bucket and I came back, I think, another 3 times. And each time I was leaving with like a crate and 2 buckets or a crate and 2 bags full of grapes that you can then turn. Well, I don't make wine really. I don't like wine that much, to be honest. I like eating more than drinking. I do like a glass of good wine, but I also realize that it takes, skill and experience, and just to turn them into something mediocre is a waste of ingredient for me. So instead, I made them into jams, into chutneys, and also they make an absolutely beautiful and super strong vinegar. Of course, in the process of getting to become a vinegar, they were wine for a little while, but the wine it was not good. Yeah, just let's put it that way. It was actually horrible. So I was happy that I decided from the very start it's meant to be vinegar. And this vinegar really, really, really potent, very intense color, very intense fruity flavor. Again, the older it gets, the better it becomes. So yeah. That would be my choice with grapes, and there's really a lot of them. And the wine varieties, not the dessert ones, so they're small, but they're so intense in terms of flavor. I mean, the skins are so packed with flavor. It's like, how do I describe this flavor with the black ones? Because I always prefer black ones, they're stronger. I don't know if that's gonna, if many people will know what I'm talking about. In the communist times in Poland, there was very little of everything, and we could not grow grapes because it was too cold. And once my mother's friend brought from Canada, she brought like a little packets of, it was like a powder that she'd add to water to make it, like a flavored drink. And there was a grape flavored one, and I've never had grapes in my life back then. It was very tasty, but what I can taste now in these grapes is this flavor from back then. And you can never get this flavor from bought grapes. I have no idea how they made this powder, and I'm pretty sure it was artificial. But they must have been pretty accurate on flavor. So the black grapes from here, they taste exactly like what it did 40-something years ago back in this little from Canada. Never, ever will you find this flavor in bought grapes. So I do buy some fruits as well, obviously. Like our kids, they're not terribly keen on tiny little, slightly tart grapes that are full of pips. I like it. This is what I want, yes, but they prefer, nice, big, watery, sweet, seedless grapes.
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
I do taste them, but no, it's like sweet water compared to the fruit.
Yeah, yeah. They're tasty, but there's no interest in them. In other words, the flavor profile is just one thing. It's sweet. There's really nothing else to it. You get a wild grape, it might have all different kinds of tannins in it that would be, interesting, enjoyable, and suitable for making all kinds of different things. I did want to, since we're talking about fall, though, I definitely want to ask you about mushrooms, because foraging for mushrooms is a big deal. In the United States, here in Portugal, it's a big deal. All over Europe, it's a big deal. So tell me about foraging for mushrooms. And do a lot of mushroom foragers, especially, they like to keep their mushroom foraging locations secret. It sounds like, Marta, you're very open about where you're going to these places. They're all out in public. But do you keep your mushroom places secret?
Not really, but I always believe that there's enough of everything for everyone. And the abundance of everything here would feed a couple of countries, I think, if people bothered picking it. Maybe that's why we have such an amazing wildlife here as well, because there's more than enough for everyone. I don't feel the need to protect my places. I take people as well sometimes, just not teaching them how to forage for mushrooms because the responsibility is slightly too big for that. But I say, I'm going mushroom picking. Would you like to come along? I take no responsibility for what you put in your mouth at the end. If I pick it and I tell you it's okay to eat or I cook it, yes, I do take responsibility for it. Whatever you eat back home, it's not my responsibility. I just want to make it clear. So they come with me. People are not confident about foraging for mushrooms, which is quite easy to understand considering that you can kill yourself with one. But I don't keep them secret. Another reason for me not having a need to keep them secret is that I'm always the one and only person there picking these mushrooms. Because in Abruzzo, there's an awful lot of mushrooms, but there's only two mushrooms of interest. Truffle and porcini. Nobody picks, barely anyone picks anything else. And I like everything else that's edible, and I'm confident to pick. Nobody touches. So, again, I found my niche. I never have any competition picking these things. Like, I don't have competition picking cherries or apples or plums from wild or abundant trees. I have no competition picking my mushrooms. Nothing whatsoever. Even here, even elderly people, they're scared. They know their truffle and they know their porcini, and that's it. And there's so much more. So much more.
Is truffle hunting a big thing there? Are there truffle hunting dogs and people going out there?
Our side of Abruzzo, which is on the border with Molise, and it's all green, wild, empty hills covered with oak woods mostly.
The oak trees,
yeah. Every village has a truffle hunter or a number of them, just like every village has a hunter or a number of them. People keep dogs here because here we hunt truffles with dogs. I don't do that. Our dogs are pretty useless for that, and I don't love the truffle that much, to be honest. I'm very happy with all the other mushrooms that grow above the ground. But when I was on a certain course for small entrepreneurs here in Abruzzo, there were two seasoned truffle hunters. And what they told me is that Abruzzo and Molise supply about 70% of Italian truffle market.
Wow.
Not Alba, not the north of Italy. That's where they're being sold, but they're being picked mostly in Abruzzo and Molise. It's just that these two regions are absolutely hopeless at marketing and advertising themselves.
Right, because when you think of truffles from Italy, you think of Alba and Piedmont and places
always,
like that.
Yeah. You always think Alba, Piemonte, but in fact, it's mostly here, these two regions. And in here, the black truffle, the tuber estivum, which is maybe not many people know, is the not very amazing flavor-wise truffle, but it's very abundant here. I was shocked the first year. It was actually being sold in the summer in a grocery store. And I paid, I think, 12 euros for 4 big truffles. And I thought that it must be some sort of a scam or somebody's completely stupid because there's no way they should cost 12 euros. Fact is, they're not as amazing flavor-wise as I was hoping they would be. But yeah, then again, the same truffle, say in the UK, can be sold for £800 a kilo.
Yeah.
Here you can probably buy it for, I don't know how this year's prices are, but a couple of years ago, €80 a kilo. That was the going price. So, I mean, it's a massive difference. And they like freshly picked this morning, and you can buy them, for your lunch and shave them on your pasta.
Mm.
But also white truffle. White truffle here is beautiful. I've only had the pleasure once or twice to eat it. That was gifted to us by a friend hunter.
Oh, nice.
And this is, yeah, that is the thing to go for. And again, it doesn't cost a couple of €1,000 here. It's expensive compared to the summer one, but the price is not prohibitive for like a usual person. And then if you know someone in your village, if you ask them, they would just give it to you. Maybe a small one, maybe a slightly oddly shaped one that maybe they would have trouble to sell. But it really wouldn't be like, oh, good price for you, €300. No. If they can't use it, they would just give it to you and say, like, I hope you like it, because that's how Abruzzo people are.
I need to make some friends in Abruzzo. That's what.
Yes. Abruzzo is still, honestly, I always say that the time has stopped here. I don't know how many years back, but it's still normal for neighbors to swap goods and services. Like our elderly neighbors, they don't have a veggie patch anymore because they're like nearly 90. So they used to bring us chicken eggs because they, at certain point you have too many. They used to bring us courgettes, fennels, things that they used to grow a couple of years ago. They all come together. They were not able to process it, and they knew that we're like a family of 5 or 6, so they would just bring it to us, asking always, do we want them? Obviously, no forcing. And now what I can do is I can bring the surplus of our things, even if I could technically process it or give it to our animals or whatever, I think it's nicer to try and repay them, for their being so kind before. Or if I make a cake, of course, I cut off a portion and I just bring it to the neighbors. Or if another neighbor needs help with some physical work, he will ask my husband, can you give me a hand on Friday with whatever? And it's not, can you give me a hand and how much is it? Can you give me a hand because I'm your neighbor? And we say yes. And then, if we need something, because for example, he has a tractor and we don't, when he works his field, he's going to come and work our field and he's never going to ask a cent for it. So this is still the way it works in here, which again makes it a fantastic place to live in, because there's very few places left like this in Europe. I don't know in the world because I haven't traveled that much, but in Europe, I think it's a very rare thing to still have people treat each other like that.
I love the sharing economy. This story you're telling me, Marta, makes my heart very warm. You have a bed and breakfast in Abruzzo. Tell me a little bit about Il Monte Farmhouse.
Okay, so our structure, we called it Il Monte because our terrace faces a solitary mountain. And before we knew what it was called, we just called it in Italian a mountain, which is Il Monte. And the farmhouse because during the COVID times, we decided to focus more on developing what we have around us here and trying to share it with people more than trying to look for employment elsewhere. So we decided to raise goats, ducks, geese. We had our veggie patch. We keep planting fruit trees other than the foraging, obviously. We also try to be as self-sufficient food-wise as we can without going crazy. We're never going to grow grains and, mill our own flour, but the vegetable, the fruit, the eggs, the meat, the cheeses, the milk, yes, we produce our own and we don't really buy much of it. And it's a little farmhouse that we just made hopefully comfortable enough for our guests. It can fit 4 people comfortably, maybe with a kid or with a baby extra. It's not big. It's a simple kind of accommodation, so you won't find all the modern things like air conditioning here or whatnot. But there is Wi-Fi, there is parking at the front. What we would like people to be able to experience, if they wish so, obviously, is to see how simple living can be rewarding and hopefully interesting, just to get rid of all this pressure that people usually have, with having to make money, rush from one place to another. We do work a lot and it's hard work physically, but we only do what needs doing and when we feel it needs doing. So when we have guests here, they can decide whether they want to cook for themselves. If they do, they're very welcome to go to our veggie patch and pick whatever is growing there for themselves. There's plenty for everyone to share. When the birds are laying, they're very welcome, to come and pick the eggs, and if they like cooking them or tasting them. Everything here is organic, obviously. They can come and see how the goats are milked. They can do it themselves. They can come with me to see how cheese is made. If they want a proper class on cheese making, if the goats are producing milk, obviously, they're very welcome to do so as well. If they want to learn some traditional cooking, Abruzzo cooking, which is very simple, but very, very healthy, very seasonal, and very filling, they can, of course, ask me as well, could they come? If we have kids here, they usually come to the kitchen and help me prepare meals. The guests can decide also to have meals at ours. They can have breakfasts and evening meals, or just evening meals. They can also just book a one-off experience if they want. We can do a whole experience made of like 5 tasting dishes, or they can just have simple meals of whatever is available and best at the given moment, of some starters, some hot dish, and some homemade desserts. So we try to be very flexible, but most of all, we want people here to feel absolutely no pressure with everything, and just to feel part of this amazing nature that is really everywhere around here. So that's what our guests can expect from here. Not shopping, not seaside, no, but if they want peace, quiet, and reconnecting with nature and slowing down and enjoying really nice food that's very honest and very fresh and picked just a couple of meters away from where they sleep, they're very welcome to come here.
Listening to you describe this, Marta, I can feel my heart rate going down, my blood pressure going down, and I have a smile on my face. So
with the blood pressure, honestly, yes, it does work here. I came here with high blood pressure, and we left our careers and the rat race behind in Ireland. And yeah, we get asked this question, like, you were managers, directors, making good money. Why did you just drop it all and, you run in the meadows with grazed legs and go and take goats for a walk? Because that was our choice. And we absolutely love it. And I would never want to go back to the previous life. This is the real life.
And people can come and experience it for themselves, and they can see why, 100%.
Absolutely, they can. They're very welcome to come. And like I said, I make no secret of anything that's happening here. And they're very welcome to participate in all the nice and not so nice things. I mean, if someone wants to see how you trim goats' hooves, yeah, they're very welcome to come as well. It's not the prettiest thing to do and not the easiest one. But if someone is curious, please do come. But if you prefer just to watch us from the distance and maybe taste the milk that just came beside you in the bucket when I was walking up the stairs, you're also very welcome. So yeah, no pressure, absolutely. But if you're missing this sort of simple once upon a time kind of lifestyle, I think Il Monte Farmhouse is a very good place for you to come to.
Well, Marta from Il Monte Farmhouse in Abruzzo, thank you so much for being on Destination Eat Drink. It's been a delight talking to you. I love what you're doing with your life, with the farmhouse, with the family, and happy foraging to you.
Thank you very much, Brent. It's been an absolute pleasure to take part in your beautiful project. And I hope that we meet here one day. I mean, the invitation is open for you always, be it spring or any other season. Just let me know what dates suit you, and I'm sure we can organize it. And I'd love to take you foraging as well.
We would love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very, very much, Brent. Take care.
Okay, that's Marta Udalowa. You can follow her on Facebook and Instagram at Forager in Italy. And to rent the Il Monte Farmhouse, I've got a link in the show notes to her Airbnb listing. And if you want more of my conversation with Marta, head over to my Substack. Members get access to the full interview, not only with Marta, but lots of other guests on Destination Eat Drink. That's at destinationeatdrink.substack.com. That's it for this week. Next week, it's Singapore for coconut pancakes and street food with UNESCO recognition. So don't miss that. Until then, you can head over to destinationeatdrink.com. I post all kinds of foodie travel content over there. And this week, it's about Berlinga Island in Portugal. It's a rock in the Atlantic, about 45 minutes by boat from mainland Portugal. And there's an incredible fort there. It looks like something out of Game of Thrones, as well as some cool caves on Berlinga. You can read about Berlinga Island and see some really nice pictures at destinationeatdrink.com/blog. I also just posted a new video. This one is a food crawl in Providence, Rhode Island, where I try a dish called a gaga. Yep, that's what the locals call it, gaga. And you can see that by clicking on the video tab at destinationeatdrink.com or by going to my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/@destinationeatdrink946. And remember, if you're thinking about a trip to Portugal, check out my foodie travel guide at buymeacoffee.com/destinationeatdrink/extras. This One Portugal book covers 17 cities and towns in Portugal at over 600 pages. It tells you all the great foods and drinks to try, the things to do when you come here. It's all there in one place. buymeacoffee.com/destinationeatdrink/extras. Destination Eat Drink is distributed by the Radio Misfits Podcast Network and Ed Silla. Thanks, Ed. I'm Brent Peterson, and I'll see you down the road.
Join us next week for another culinary adventure on Destination Eat Drink, a presentation of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.